I'm 80 years old, and sometimes I still wake up in the morning feeling as though my life rushed past me in the blink of an eye. One day, I was a spirited teenager dreaming of the future, with my whole life spread out like a grand tapestry waiting to be colored. Suddenly I turned around and decades had slipped away. Over the years, I've built a family, pursued a career, and tried my best to be a responsible citizen in my community. Yet looking back on everything, there's one mistake that keeps me awake at night more often than I'd like to admit. I want to share it with you in the hope that maybe you'll learn from where I stumbled, so that your own path can be clearer than mine ever was. I grew up in a time when we didn't talk much about feelings or mental health, or even things like personal passions and self-discovery. We were taught to do what was practical, get a good job, save money, raise a family. Of course, those were noble things to strive for, and I don't regret taking on those responsibilities. But I do regret making them my entire universe, to the exclusion of everything else that mattered to me as a person. My biggest mistake is that I spent so many years ignoring my own inner voice, pushing down dreams or interests that weren't practical, and letting stress and obligations overshadow my well-being. When I was young, I dreamed of all kinds of possibilities. I loved writing short stories, tinkering with electronics, and even painting scenes from my small hometown. Yet, when it came time to settle down, I chose a path that felt safe, one that promised security and stability. Again, that's not necessarily wrong. People need stability in life, especially when they have to support a family. But if I could talk to my younger self, I'd say, don't bury those dreams so deeply that you forget they exist. Don't become so wrapped up in duties and practicality that you lose the spark of what makes you unique, because eventually years pass. And once the routine is locked in, it can be hard to remember how to free yourself from it. I clearly recall the day I realized something inside me had gone dormant. I was in my late 30s, working a steady job, coming home exhausted, and I barely had time to talk to my spouse or play with my children, let alone think about writing that novel I once dreamed about. I told myself there was no point even trying. Who would read it? Where would I find the time? So I told my creative side to hush. It was simpler to just turn on the TV at night and zone out. That pattern continued for years. Little did I know, burying that part of myself would accumulate into a regret that later felt like a weight on my heart. I also neglected my own health in the process. Physical and mental well-being seemed less urgent than finishing projects at work or making sure the bills were paid on time. I prided myself on being the one everyone could rely on. I told myself that I had to be strong for the family, that self-care was a luxury I simply couldn't afford. I skipped medical checkups, ate irregularly, and let my stress levels build, to the point where I barely even noticed how tense I was. It was like living in a constant fog of small pressures. None of them seemed urgent enough individually to warrant a big change, but added together, they chipped away at my vitality. Now, decades later, I understand that ignoring my own needs, physical, emotional, spiritual, didn't just harm me. It influenced my relationships with loved ones. When you're living in a state of low-level anxiety and suppressed dreams, it's nearly impossible to be fully present with those you care about. I look at my grandchildren now, and I'm sometimes saddened by the realization that I could have offered my own children more patience, more laughter, and more warmth if I hadn't been so wrapped up in the belief that I had to push myself to the edge to be worthy or successful. While I'm grateful for what I have, my family, my home, my experiences, I can't help but wish I had balanced things differently. If I could speak directly to someone in their 50s, 60s, or even 70s, I'd want to emphasize that it's never too late to course correct. It might feel that way, especially if you've spent decades living a certain pattern, but you'd be surprised how a small shift in mindset can yield a huge improvement in day-to-day living. Perhaps you've been telling yourself you're too old to pick up that brush and paint something, or that it's silly to try your hand at a hobby you once loved. I wish I'd taken up painting again when I was 50 instead of waiting until I was 70 to even consider it. That's 2 entire decades of potential joy and growth that I missed. It's not that I regret the responsibilities or the life that I led, but I do wish I had offered myself some space to breathe, to create, and to nurture my spirit along the way. It's interesting how regrets can teach us so much, though. And the last decade or so, I've made it a point to take better care of my health. I walk every day, even if it's just for 15 or 20 minutes. I found that breathing fresh air and moving my body does wonders for my mood, my joints, and my sense of connection to the world. I started practicing gentle stretches in the morning, something akin to beginner yoga, which I never thought would be my cup of tea. Let me tell you, it's surprising how beneficial a few mindful movements can be for an aching back or stiff shoulders, especially after so many years of living with stress. I also pay more attention to my diet now. I'm not on any strict meal plan, but I've become more deliberate about eating plenty of fruits, vegetables, and whole grains. It took me decades to realize that what we put into our bodies directly affects how we feel emotionally, not just physically. In my earlier years, I would have scoffed at the idea of prioritizing something like meditation or journaling, but I've come to realize that reflection is a powerful tool. Even if you begin it late in life, the act of writing down my thoughts, my worries, my gratitude, my memories, has helped me process parts of my past that I never fully addressed. If you're reading this and you feel any sort of nagging disquiet in your heart, let me assure you that it's worthwhile to give voice to that feeling. Sometimes we don't even know what's truly bothering us until we take a moment to slow down and articulate it. My regret isn't just about not writing that novel or ignoring my creative passions. It's also about the countless small ways I chose security over self-discovery. I can't tell you how many invitations I declined or how many social gatherings I missed because I felt too tired or too busy. Of course, no one can attend everything, but when I look back, I realize that at times I was simply avoiding opportunities for fun or connection, convincing myself that I had more pressing matters to deal with. Life is about relationships, shared experiences, and being part of a community. We each have unique ways of connecting. Some of us are more introverted, some more extroverted, but regardless of personality type, we all need to feel part of something larger than ourselves. I regret not staying in touch with certain friends who moved away. Friendships can be a lifeline, especially in later years when isolation can creep in if we're not careful. I let so many relationships fade simply because I assumed we'd always have time. Now that I'm 80, I can see how quickly that time can vanish. Not everyone gets the blessing of a long life, and even if we do live many years, health challenges can make it harder to travel or spend time the way we'd like. I encourage anyone who reads this to take an inventory of the connections in your life that matter. If there's someone you haven't reached out to in a while, maybe it's time to pick up the phone or send a letter. You might be surprised at how meaningful a simple message can be to another person and to you as well. Yet I also realize that regret itself can become a trap. If I dwell too long on what could have been, I rob myself of the present moment. The greatest lesson that regret has taught me is the importance of acceptance and self-forgiveness. We all make choices we later question. That's the nature of being human. The challenge is to glean wisdom from those choices and apply it to whatever time remains. Whether you're reading this at 50, 60, 70, or even in your 80s like me, I want you to know that there's still an opportunity to shift gears. It might be small changes, like deciding to wake up every morning and write in a journal for 10 minutes, or trying out a new art class at the local community center. Or it could be something bigger, like deciding to downsize and move somewhere, closer to family so you can spend more time with them. Wisdom often arrives hand in hand with age, but it doesn't do much good if we don't put it into practice. One bit of wisdom I've discovered is that kindness to both oneself and others is a form of nourishment. I used to be impatient, constantly on edge about the next deadline or the next bill that needed paying. Over the years, I realized that we can approach our tasks with a calm spirit, or we can approach them with tension and annoyance. The tasks remain the same, but the difference is in how we carry ourselves. Kindness softens the rough edges of everyday life, and it costs nothing. I've found that even a brief smile or a gentle word can improve my mood and the mood of those around me. Another lesson I wish I'd embraced earlier is that physical health underpins almost everything. I've seen many of my peers put off seeing a doctor for aches and pains until they become major issues. I did the same when I was younger. We tell ourselves we're too busy, or that the pain isn't that bad, or that it's just part of getting older. Then before we know it, our mobility is compromised, or we end up needing more invasive treatments than we would have if we'd addressed the problem sooner. I'm not saying one has to run to the doctor for every minor complaint, but you do have to pay attention to the signals your body is sending you. Pain and fatigue are ways your body communicates that something needs changing, whether that's your diet, your exercise routine, your stress levels, or your medical care. I also regret how long it took me to realize the importance of mental and emotional health. Stress has an insidious way of creeping into every corner of life, especially when we're juggling responsibilities. For many years, I just assumed feeling perpetually anxious or tightly wound was normal. Only later did I discover that practices like slow breathing, mindfulness, and even taking a relaxing walk in nature can do wonders for reducing stress. When stress is left unchecked, it affects your heart, your immune system, and even your ability to enjoy social relationships. It can accelerate the aging process in ways that aren't always obvious until you look in the mirror one day and wonder why you feel decades older than you are. If there's one piece of advice I'd give anyone who's nearing retirement or already in their golden years, it's to make stress reduction a priority. Don't assume that being older automatically means you have to live with constant worry. There's another side to my regret story, and it has to do with how much time I spent comparing myself to others. When I was younger, I'd look around and see people who seemed to have it all together. They had the bigger house, the nicer car, the higher-paying job. Instead of celebrating what I had, I kept pushing myself to catch up to them. This comparison trap is dangerous. It causes you to overwork and neglect what truly brings you joy because you're chasing someone else's idea of success. Now, of course, I'm not saying material comforts are meaningless. We all need a certain level of comfort to thrive. But if you find yourself constantly chasing what other people have, you might miss the things in your own life that are already blessings. I've learned that real success is waking up content with the life you're living, feeling gratitude for your relationships, and having the energy to pursue activities that enrich your mind and soul. It took me decades to understand that chasing external markers of achievement can become a treadmill you never step off. I regret the years I spent running on that treadmill. The good news is, no matter where you are in life, you can step off. Now, if you choose, it might involve simplifying your lifestyle or letting go of certain expectations, but it's so liberating to live by your own definition of success rather than someone else's. One might wonder how to make that shift, especially later in life. Part of it is self-reflection, being honest with yourself about what you actually want versus what you think you should want. Another part is giving yourself permission to explore. If you're retired or close to retirement, this can be the perfect time to do just that, though it's certainly never too early or too late for self-discovery. You might try taking a class at a local adult education center, or you might volunteer somewhere that aligns with a passion you've always had but never fully pursued. The key is to not let fear of embarrassment or failure hold you back. Too many of us remain silent about our interests because we think we're not good enough or that it's too late to start. Trust me, it's never too late. You may not become a world-class concert pianist at 75, but you can certainly learn to play a favorite song and enjoy every minute of it. Let's talk about relationships for a moment, because that's another area where regret can accumulate if we're not careful. I already touched on friendships, but romantic relationships and family dynamics are equally crucial. My biggest regret includes the fact that I sometimes let emotional distance grow between me and my loved ones, because I was too preoccupied with other matters. Occasionally, I'd find myself snapping at my spouse or my kids over small inconveniences simply because I was tired or stressed. In hindsight, those moments accumulate. Words spoken in anger or frustration can linger in the memory of those we care about. We can't always be perfect. We all get irritated now and then. However, we can be mindful of how we communicate, ensuring that we don't let irritations eclipse the love we feel for one another. One strategy that helped me once I realized the damage my impatience could cause was to step away from the situation the moment I felt tension rising. Even a brief pause to take a few slow breaths or sip some water can break the cycle of a negative reaction. It's such a simple habit, yet it can transform your interactions. I regret not having learned it decades earlier. If I had, perhaps some of the arguments or misunderstandings that plagued our household would have been avoided or at least softened. On the flip side, I've also learned that forgiving others is a gift to yourself as well. Holding on to grudges, especially as the years stretch on, only weighs you down. It took me a long time to realize that many of the grievances I clung to from my past, arguments with relatives, co-workers who had done me wrong, weren't helping me grow. All they did was feed my sense of resentment. Meanwhile, those people I was upset with were likely getting on with their lives, not even aware that I was holding these negative feelings in my heart. Releasing grudges doesn't mean condoning hurtful behavior. It means you acknowledge the pain, learn from the experience, and then set yourself free to move forward. As I've gotten older, I've had to come to terms with the fact that my body can't do what it once did. Mobility issues, joint pain, or other age-related challenges can creep up on us. That's not a regret in itself. Aging is part of life, but I do regret not taking steps earlier to maintain my strength and flexibility. Gentle exercise routines, tailored to seniors like water aerobics or Tai Chi, can keep you limber and improve balance. I underestimated how vital this was until I had a close call with a fall that could have seriously injured me. Part of learning from my biggest mistake is realizing that we have to be proactive about our health, not reactive. If you're physically able, finding a moderate exercise you can enjoy consistently can be a literal lifesaver. Don't wait until your doctor warns you that your bones are too weak or your blood pressure is too high. Start earlier and do it for your own quality of life, not just for appearances. I've also come to see that social connections play a massive role in overall well-being, especially later in life. Many people my age end up feeling isolated, and this can lead to depression, anxiety, or a sense of purposelessness. If I had understood this better, I might have worked harder to keep in touch with old friends and make new ones. It's never too late to reach out, though. Community centers, senior clubs, and volunteer organizations are all places where you can find like-minded people. Even online platforms can be beneficial if used wisely, as they let you connect with friends or family who might be scattered around the country or even the world. The point is that human beings are social creatures. We thrive on connection, and isolation can slowly chip away at our mental and emotional health. Sometimes people ask me whether my regret makes me sad every day. The honest answer is that it used to, but I've learned to transform it into motivation. Instead of letting regret define the rest of my days, I use it as a reminder of what truly matters. I remind myself to be present, to listen to my grandchildren's stories, even if they go on for too long, and to show empathy when they're frustrated or upset. I remind myself to tell my spouse how much I appreciate their companionship, rather than assuming they already know. Small acts of love, after all, can create a ripple effect that makes life more beautiful for everyone involved. In reflecting on my life, I also see the importance of openness to learning. It's easy to assume that by 80, you know everything you need to know. But the truth is, there's always more to discover about the world, about other people, and about yourself. My biggest regret also includes the times I closed myself off from learning opportunities because I thought I was too old or that the subject wasn't practical. Now, in my later years, I enjoy reading about topics I never explored before, from ancient history to new scientific discoveries. It keeps my mind lively, and it's a joyful experience to continue expanding my understanding of the world. We're never too old to learn a new skill or develop a new hobby. This sense of curiosity can bring a youthful spark to our days. I'd also like to talk about something I only realized in recent years: the power of gratitude. When I was younger, I tended to focus on the things that went wrong. A stressful day at work overshadowed the fact that I had a loving family waiting for me at home. A bill that was higher than expected made me lose sight of the fact that I still had enough resources to pay it without going hungry. Over time, this negative focus can make life feel more burdensome than it is. If I could rewind, I'd practice daily gratitude. Even the act of listing 3 things I was thankful for at the end of each day would have shifted my perspective significantly. Now I do it almost reflexively, and it's amazing how it brightens my mood and makes me more resilient to life's ups and downs. Practicing gratitude doesn't eliminate problems, but it does help you see that there's always something to appreciate, even in trying circumstances. Let's not forget about the role spirituality or faith can play. Whether one follows a particular religion or simply feels attuned to the wonders of nature, having a sense of something greater than ourselves can be a source of comfort and guidance. I regret that I sometimes dismissed the spiritual aspect of life when I was younger, viewing it as impractical. But with age, I've realized that nurturing your spirit, however you define it, can bring a sense of peace and purpose that carries you through even the darkest times. Whether it's attending a place of worship, meditating in your living room, or walking quietly through a forest, these practices can ground you and remind you that we're all part of a much larger story. Recall a friend who spent his entire career climbing the corporate ladder, only to retire and feel completely lost. He had identified so strongly with his job title that when it was gone, he didn't know who he was anymore. That's another form of regret. When we define ourselves too narrowly, be it by a job, a role in the family, or a specific hobby, we risk feeling untethered when circumstances change. I wish I'd developed a broader sense of identity early on, one that included my roles, but also encompassed the totality of who I am. We are, after all, more than our job descriptions, more than our achievements, and even more than the regrets we carry. We are ever-evolving beings who can adapt, learn, and grow at any age. Something else that weighs on me is the time I spent complaining about small inconveniences. I was definitely guilty of getting upset over traffic, or the house being a little messy, or the weather not cooperating with my plans. Life is never going to be perfectly aligned to our desires. By allowing trivial matters to drain our mental energy, we miss out on moments of joy that are right in front of us. When I see my grandchildren laughing or playing, it reminds me that joy can be found in the simplest things: a funny joke, a sunny day, a shared meal. My hope is that by sharing this reflection, others might realize sooner than I did that getting worked up about minor nuisances rarely solves anything. It simply robs us of the happiness available in the present moment. I also want to emphasize the importance of leaving a positive legacy, something more meaningful than money or possessions. Our true legacy lies in how we make others feel, in the lessons we pass on, and in the kindness we share. Many of us realize too late that the memories people hold of us will be shaped by how we treated them, not by what we accomplished on paper. I regret not engaging more deeply with my community when I was able-bodied and had more free time in retirement. I did some volunteering here and there, but I often think I could have done more. Now, with limited mobility, I do what I can. Perhaps writing letters or making phone calls to check on neighbors. It's never too late to show compassion, but it's far easier to do so when you're still spry and have the energy to participate in events. Help out at local charities or mentor youth in your community. As I look back on my life's arc, I see that the biggest overarching mistake was not prioritizing my inner well-being and unique passions. This oversight led to smaller regrets branching out in many areas: neglected health, strained relationships, missed experiences, and a sense of disconnection from my own self. Yet acknowledging this regret has been a strangely healing process. It's guided me to cherish the time I have now in ways I never did before. Each morning feels like a fresh opportunity to honor who I am and share what I've learned. I might be 80, but I can still call up an old friend, start a modest art project, or take a quiet walk to reflect on the beauty of the day. Yes, there are physical limitations and the shadows of past mistakes, but there's also a depth of perspective I never possessed in my youth. I suppose what I want to convey most strongly is that life is precious precisely because it doesn't last forever. There's a tendency when we're young to treat time as an infinite resource, but as the years go on, we realize how finite it really is. At the same time, the fact that our days are numbered can motivate us to live more deeply and genuinely. If I could relive my life, I'd strive to keep that truth in mind from the very beginning. I'd also remind myself that it's okay to be vulnerable, to ask for help or for guidance when I'm struggling. Too many of us bottle up our emotions, thinking it's a sign of strength to handle everything alone. In reality, sharing our burdens with people we trust is a form of courage, a statement that we respect ourselves enough to seek the support we need. Even though I can't go back in time, I can move forward with these lessons, and I can share them with you in the hope that they might lighten your own journey. Whether you're reading this at 40 or at 85, it's never too late to realign your priorities. If there's a piece of music you've always wanted to learn, give it a try. If there's a relationship that's been frayed by misunderstandings, maybe now is the time to extend an olive branch. If you've neglected your own health, perhaps schedule that doctor's visit you've been putting off. If you've longed to spend more time near the ocean or in the mountains, consider whether there's a way to make that happen, even if only for a weekend trip. I'd also encourage you to create moments of joy for yourself each day. It doesn't have to be anything grand. One day, it might be brewing a cup of herbal tea and watching the sunrise. Another day, it might be taking a moment to sit under a tree and feel the breeze on your face. These small, mindful experiences accumulate, helping to shift your mindset from one of regret or worry to one of appreciation. Over time, this practice of savoring can transform the way you view your life. Instead of seeing only the doors that closed, you begin to notice the windows of opportunity that might still be open. Of course, none of us can escape challenges altogether, but we can equip ourselves with the resilience to navigate them more gracefully. Stressful situations will arise, health scares, family disputes, financial setbacks, but how we respond makes a difference. By nurturing our physical health, feeding our mind with positive experiences, and connecting with supportive people, we create a foundation that can help us bounce back. It also helps if we remain flexible, allowing ourselves to adapt when life shifts unexpectedly. Part of my regret was my rigidity in pursuing a path that wasn't serving my deeper interests. Now, I try to stay open to new ideas, even though I'm in my 80s. That sense of openness keeps life interesting and purposeful. Another element worth mentioning is the value of teaching or mentoring. If you're in your later years, you likely have a wealth of experiences, both good and bad, that younger generations can learn from. Sharing these lessons, whether it's with your grandchildren, neighbors, or members of a community group, not only benefits them, but also reinforces your own sense of purpose. Sometimes articulating what we've learned helps us see our journey more clearly. It allows us to pass on hard-earned wisdom so that others might avoid stumbling into the same pitfalls. This is part of why I'm so motivated to speak about my regrets. I want people to understand that focusing solely on practicality at the expense of emotional and spiritual growth can lead to an unbalanced life. Nevertheless, I don't want to leave you with the impression that my life has been one long tale of regret. There have been countless moments of joy, love, and fulfillment too. I'm grateful for my family, my friends, the laughter we've shared, and the milestones we've celebrated. Life isn't black and white. It's many shades in between, full of contradictions and complexities. My regret is just one thread in a larger tapestry, but it's an important thread, one that shaped many decisions and left me feeling incomplete for a long time. As I write these words, I feel a mixture of sadness and relief. Sadness, because I can't rewrite the past. Relief, because I finally have the clarity to acknowledge that I could have done things differently. This insight, even if it came late, has given me peace and purpose. Instead of dwelling on what if, I've chosen to focus on what now, and what I do now is share. I share with my grandchildren, advising them to take care of their health and keep space for their passions. I share with peers, encouraging them to explore new activities in retirement rather than sitting idle. I share with anyone willing to listen, hoping that my words might inspire a bit of reflection or spark a small but meaningful change. At 80, I also embrace the reality that time ahead is limited, which makes each day more valuable. It's a paradox that the closer we get to the end, the more we might realize the beauty and wonder of simply being alive. This appreciation can make the little things, a pleasant conversation, a blossoming flower, a warm hug from a loved one, take on a profound significance. In a way, acknowledging regret has allowed me to appreciate what remains even more deeply. If I'd never felt the sting of what I missed, perhaps I wouldn't be so acutely aware of what I still have. So, learn from my mistake. Don't wait until you're at the final chapters of your story to start nurturing your true self. Don't neglect the small joys or dismiss your dreams as unimportant. Don't assume that someday you'll have the time or energy to do what you love. We only get one ride on this great roller coaster called life, and it's fleeting. More fleeting than I ever imagined when I was young. Make time for laughter, make time for rest, and most importantly, make time for what lights up your soul. That might mean gardening, painting, volunteering, reading, dancing, or traveling. It might just mean spending more quality moments with those you love. Whatever it is, give yourself permission to explore it wholeheartedly. Don't let the noise of daily life drown out the whispers of your heart. It's an odd feeling to be 80 and to see the world change so drastically from what I once knew. But it's also a privilege, in a way, to have witnessed so many transformations and to still be here. I hope that by sharing my story, I can offer even a small bit of guidance or comfort to others. We all have regrets, but it's what we do with them that counts. If you take anything away from this reflection, let it be a renewed commitment to honoring who you truly are, nurturing the relationships that matter, and taking care of the body and mind you've been blessed with. Time is indeed precious, and while none of us can turn it back, we can choose to live fully in whatever moments we have left. I wish you the strength to pursue your own path with courage, the wisdom to learn from your missteps, and the warmth to connect deeply with those around you.